We forget the power of a teacher and a coach.
Football may not build character, but it reveals it. And I learned a lesson that day that there were some good ones that walked off.
The Bible came to life to me because I could see the Pullen family in everything I read.
You can't be bitter about them because bitterness only affects you, is that you're as good as anybody.
They are special. The coach cares about me more than just as an athlete.
Just as worthy as any of these other kids.
I think some coaches have forgotten that sports can be fun too.
They gotta love it. You can't make them love it. There wasn't anybody around when that key broke off, and they broke it that morning. They're scared to tell me.
Hey guys, the interview today has special significance for me. It's an interview with my 9th grade football coach, Coach Jerry Pullen. We've remained close ever since 1980 when he coached me in a group of ragtag boys. And the thing that impresses me about Coach Pullen, he had a successful coaching career, but he cares about his players. He's cared about us all for the last 43 years. And I hope that he'll inspire some coaches to understand that, that one season you have where you think it may be insignificant, you make an impact. And Coach has made an impact on all of us guys. So it was a special privilege for me to have him come in, do an interview, and to hear from several of my old teammates as they share tributes to Coach Pullen. So I hope you enjoy the interview with Coach Jerry Pullen. Welcome again to That's My Dad podcast. Hey, we're doing this series with mostly high school, some college football coaches, and I believe that football coaches are a strong part of our society. They're helping keep our society together with over 19 million kids coming from father-deficient homes. A lot of young men are dependent on their coaches to try to get them through and teach them how to make it in life, and we decided we'd do this series with high school football coaches, and this is a really special interview with me because the guy I've got in the studio today is Jerry Pullen, and we almost decided we weren't going to tell this part, but I'm just going to tell it up front. Coach Pullen was my 9th grade football coach 43 years ago, back in 1980. Welcome to the studio, Coach Pullen. Thanks for the 7-hour drive to get here. I really appreciate you coming.
It's great to be here. Great to see you.
So let's go back, and I don't want this to be a local show that only our local people would be interested. I have a purpose in telling our story, because what happened was you were a young 22-year-old coach just getting started, and you took a group of scrappy little boys, and through the next 43 years, there's continued to be a special bond, and I think that happens a lot with coaches and football teams, but maybe there's a guy out there that's wondering, how did you do that? So let me just go back and ask you, tell us the story of how you came into that role as our coach in 1980.
Well, I'd played at Emma Sansom for Coach Gross. Sometimes you say Buster because people know him as Buster when you say Coach Gross. Not everybody remembers, but I'm going to refer to him as Coach Gross, and he it's something that I guess about my 3rd year of college, I was playing, and then I'd come home at Christmas and I'd substitute because we'd get out early on the quarter system. And I'd substitute there at Emma Sansom High School. And the principal stopped me one day and said, you think you want to go into coaching? And I said, well, I really do. And he said, well, Coach Gross thinks you'll be a really good coach. I said, well, that really made my day. I mean, because I'll probably get into that a little more talking with kids, because it really gave me a lot of confidence. I didn't know that he thought that about me, that I'd be a good coach. And it meant an awful lot, just Mr. Newman, the principal, saying that.
Just an adult kind of affirming who you were and what you had the potential to do. We forget the power of a teacher and a coach and the power of their words to impact us.
Yeah, and I guess that's all I ever really wanted to do. I kept up with all the high school and college coaches when I was young, especially the high school coaches that had, I mean, I could start naming them all that were just long tenured people, you know, like Coach Glover at a wall, and just it goes on and on. I could go Coach Scales at Alexandria, just guys that were 40-year plus guys that, but I just really enjoyed. I love football that much.
What'd you like most about coaching?
I didn't realize at the time I just liked football so much, but once I got into it, I enjoyed watching kids improve. That was the most rewarding thing. To when you take a kid and when he leaves you and you see that he's grown.
You've stayed in touch with that group of guys. It's been 43 years. What is it that's kept you motivated to stay in touch with all of us?
You know, you feel like, first off, I think I mistreated y'all.
We may go back and revisit that in a minute. But I wasn't that much older than y'all. I came right back to my high school. You know, a lot of the brothers and sisters of the players I'd gone to school with. Yeah.
But if you go through something together, football may not build character, but it reveals it. Mm-hmm. And you see the kids that, I was very hard on y'all and the ones that stayed. And I learned a lesson that day that there were some good ones that walked off eventually in that summer practice with y'all as ninth graders.
Yeah, the notorious summer of 1980.
Yeah. But there's always a guy steps up that you said, oh, no, we're going to play him, and he plays well for you because, it was a lesson learned there early.
Yeah. So is that what kind of kept you going, is to see the guys grow up and to get better and to improve, or was it just football? What do you think really got you motivated?
I don't know. I've always loved kids, and of course, I had a great role model with my father. Mm-hmm. My dad was the most positive person I've ever seen. It never was about. It was like if I went 1 for 3 in a baseball game, all he wanted to talk about was the one, not the other two. And it was always on the positive, but he demanded you give your best effort. As long as you're giving all your effort, it's going to be positive. And it's just, and I think it passed on to me.
Yeah.
One time there's a story about positivity. I was fairly young, and I was just laughing about somebody's dad, dog cussing Goodyear, steel plant one. Mm-hmm. I was just telling my dad about it, laughing. He said, well, he should not do that because they provide him with a living.
Yeah.
A very good living, and you should be thankful for that living,
Yeah.
And that probably had a lasting impact on me too.
Yeah, I've heard you tell that story before of how he had a job. Most of the guys in our neighborhood, they worked at the steel plant or the tire plant.
Exactly.
And there was a lot of complaining and didn't know how to appreciate what they had. But your dad was always a proponent of, hey, you better be thankful for what you got. Even, to his last days, and I was privileged to get to know him in those, or I knew him long before then, but to get to spend a lot of time with him. Is there a story that you can remember about your dad, something he might have done that really impacted you think about a lot today?
Probably just wasn't one. It was probably just, always making a point to see the broken people. Mm-hmm. And, that somebody had problems and be the first guy to shake their hand when he saw them.
Yeah.
Always mindful of that. Some men would call the house sometimes. they had done something they probably shouldn't have, and they just wanted to talk to him, maybe to make it better for him.
Yeah.
He was just a listener.
As we were getting ready to come into the studio, I had called one of your former athletes, Michael Brewster, and Michael took off work and drove over here. He had 10 minutes. He could come over and say hello to you. And he said something that really stuck into my mind. He said, when I got older, after playing for Coach Pullen, when I got older, I was reading the Bible, and the Bible came to life to me because I could see the Pullen family in everything I read. And I thought, what an incredible compliment. But that was who your dad was, and that's who you are. So let's talk about that summer of 1980 a little bit. You came in and you worked the dog out of us guys. And several of those guys went on and played college ball, and they'll tell you, I think, that their ninth grade summer was probably the roughest practice they'd ever been through. What were you thinking?
You're young and you think you got to just, and I even look at that team picture one day and I wasn't even smiling. I mean, you got to,
yeah.
I thought I had to just ride herd on y'all. And that's what I thought you had to do.
Yeah.
And then it was so funny, the one story that, of course, we had a great team, I mean, we really did. We killed everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's what's so funny is your age group, we had a great team, and then we added more than two, but two of the two guys that wound up being the number one prospects in the state of Alabama didn't even play on that ninth grade team. They were at another school at that time.
Yeah.
Then they joined y'all. So when y'all got to Sansom, y'all weren't going to lose any games hardly.
Yeah, but you had prepared us pretty well during that summer, and so I want to tell the story, and I got a purpose in telling it. I think some coaches have forgotten that sports can be fun too. It's not all about work ethic and banging your head and all the hard work and X's and O's. The fun things are what we remember. That team from 1980, we're 43 years out, and we still get together. We still talk. I've got all those guys' number in my phone. And there's one story that we all remember. If you ask us one story, it's the day we went to Johnny Deep. So what had happened was the managers had broken the key off in the field house. We were doing two-a-days, so I think we had to be there at 7 o'clock, and you worked us until it seemed like 11, and then we came back from 4 to 6 or something in the evening. But we showed up to practice, and we were just tired, just dog beat up, and the key had gotten broken off in the field house door. And somehow you made the impromptu decision that we were going swimming. And so I don't know how you got us. I remember we got in the back of your pickup, and some other guys came somehow and picked us up. And we ended up at a swimming hole, which it's illegal to swim at now, I think. But we were swimming in the Nakalula Falls swimming hole.
Oh, yeah.
And you told us that if everybody would go off the high rock, which is about 40, 50 feet off the water, that you'd feed us lunch. And so we had to throw two guys off because they were scared to death of water, probably would have drowned. But we threw them off, and we all went and had lunch, and your mom and dad fixed hamburgers and stuff. But you remember that, right, Coach?
I remember it well.
Did I tell the story right? Was that what happened?
You told it. Oh, that's so stupid. I could have been sued. That could have been the end of my coaching career.
Yeah.
And just sitting there letting y'all go in there and swim and throw those two off the top. And then, but the thing was, I said, we all did it. Y'all all jumped off. So, like several reluctantly, but
yeah,
I can remember Brick Haley and George Malone throwing Barry Taylor off that rock.
Yeah, yeah.
And the fear and look in his eye. But I made sure that everybody was underneath to catch him. You know?
Barry's still traumatized by that, by the way.
But this is where my parents come in. I went by Moon's Grocery or sent somebody to get hamburgers and hot dogs. took them straight to my parents' house. They weren't expecting y'all. I said, we got to feed this bunch.
Yeah.
My mother and dad got busy. I got busy. We got them cooked, got them, just had a big time. Some of y'all called your parents, said, hey, we'll be back. But
yeah.
it was it was really a special time. You know, everybody looks back on that now, and I think about my parents, though. I think about my dad and mom, just, they never batted an eye.
No, they were out there cooking hamburgers and just welcomed us all in their house. And, you know, quite frankly, that was in a day and age where black people and white people didn't go to each other's houses. And
of course, you know, that wasn't that way at my house.
Wasn't that way at your house? It never was.
It never was, and I was, you know, just was not in our DNA.
Yeah. So we all had a great time that day, and you get those guys together, and they'll tell you that story before they'll tell you anything else. But the reason I wanted to take the time to tell that story is because it's those memories that you have that you build together as a team. That's one of the great things about playing high school football or pee-wee football or baseball, whatever. It's those friendships. You know, through the years, I've been able to call on all those guys, and I think they would come help me with whatever needed to be helped with, and I know I would go do anything I could do for those guys. But it wasn't just because we were on a football team together. A lot of that was because we shared those fun memories that you helped us to develop.
You know, that's one of the things that you really, if you go through something with somebody, and I don't care what kind of team it is, where you're challenged and you succeed, when you see that person the rest of your life, you might walk by each other and you may not be able to talk, but the way you look at each other, it's not the way you look at a guy you went to school with. Mm-hmm. It's the guy you played with.
Yeah.
You know, you went through something with him.
Yeah.
And that's a bond that's for life.
It is.
You know?
We lost a very close friend, a teammate. For the benefit of coaches who may be going through that, tell us about that experience of losing Phillip Adams, who was a real close friend of mine, and you were his coach. And not only were you his coach, he went to church with you, and you were his mentor.
Yeah, that was hard. You know, I'd already left and gone up to Valley Head. It was my first year there, and I can tell you right in the spot in the house when my wife took the phone call and told me what happened. And it was a really good, you know, when you got a great kid like that and did everything he's ever asked to, and he was developing into a good ball player, and he wasn't a natural player, but had just tried so hard. Mm-hmm. And had done everything he was supposed to. And I actually went to church with them as well. They attended our church at Bellevue Methodist, and yeah, that was the first player I ever lost, and it was hard. That funeral was really hard, and you know, all y'all were there, and it was. You know.
Yeah, I remember seeing you cry at the graveside, and there was that tough old football coach. It just the summer prior had nearly killed us all.
Yeah, it did.
Practice, and I saw you crying. What advice do you have for a coach that has to go through that?
You know, I think the first thing you would do is go try to find another coach that's been through it and ask them how they handle it. You know, I was at Alabama when we lost Willie Riles, a defensive tackle. Mm-hmm. Mississippi State, we lost Willie Monroe, a defensive lineman. It's funny. Funny those two, you know, they take a lot out of a team when you lose a comrade, you know. It's you don't recover. It takes its toll, you know.
Yeah, you just never really get over that, do you?
No.
You just have to keep pressing on. You mentioned after you coached us, you got a head coaching job at a high school, right? Yeah. I mean, you were 24 years old.
24. I think I may have been. I know I was one of the youngest head coaches in the state, public school. Dale Pruitt was it. I think he had taken the Pisgah job the same year I took Valley Head. He was the same age I was, I think.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was. I thought I was a great coach because I had y'all, and all that talent down, and all of a sudden I realized I get up there. Well, first off, first rule in coaching: never take a job by phone. It's never.
You're a head coach at 26.
24.
24.
What I did was, the coach had left really late, and so they really needed one. And I thought, well, I'm going to try to do this, and so went up there and took the job. And again, I thought I knew a lot, and then I get up there and things aren't very good. The seniors, a bunch of the older ones said they just weren't going to play football anymore. I guess they were tired of coaching changes or something. So I really had a bunch of ninth graders that were willing to buy in, and the first year was a hard year, and but they would play, and I didn't even know what the rules were, but they would play on Friday nights as ninth graders and get beat on. And Monday night I'd let them play in the JV games and they'd get even. But they got 20 games in. Well, I'll say probably 18 games in a year. Yeah. And I said, I've got to get this thing turned around here. We went 7-3, really got it turned around. Bunch of tough kids. They were like y'all, Scott. They just weren't they weren't like the kids I'd had in Wisconsin. Those kids, y'all were just really boisterous and tough, and you roll a ball out in the gym and y'all all run for it and somebody's fighting. Mm-hmm. Something's happening quick with a ball on the floor. Yeah. And I got up there and I realized there was a lot of those kids, you could throw a ball out there and they wouldn't even run to it. And then that ninth grade bunch they would compete. And so I just played off them and bonded with those guys too. And so then I went into college coaching. I stayed there 2 years and left it better than when I got there. And they won the state championship 2 years later.
Yeah, so there's an interesting story. There were two teams won state championships who you had previously coached.
Yeah.
Won a state championship on the same night.
Yeah.
But you went from being my ninth grade coach to being at University of Alabama within 6 years, 4 years.
6 years.
6 years. So you had quite a successful coaching career. You ran across a lot of guys, though, who grew up without a dad.
Yeah.
What do you say to those guys? What do you say to them now?
You better know the story. Every kid's got their story. I mean, no, they're not going to tell you their story, but you need to know their story. Or have they got a dad? Have they got a mom? Before you do anything, know that. And I definitely coach kids that didn't have a dad visible. I'd coach them different in the fact that usually, the first thing is they usually needed extra money, so we'd find work for them,
Yeah.
And that way, a lot of times you're working with them yourself, and so you bond with them a little more, because you want to make sure they're taken care of and they have spending money.
So let's be clear, because some people are going to think that's crazy. You took some of my teammates who didn't have I hate to say any of us were poor, because by the world standards we weren't, but we were. And you took those guys and you'd let them come up and cut your grass or rake leaves or whatever and pay them so that they could have a little extra spending money.
People are always needing somebody to work too, and I'd work with them sometimes. We'd go work at Guff Steel Golf Course.
Yeah. So you kind of find out what their story is, but if you can speak directly to that kid that and I'm not going to call any of my teammates names, but some of them didn't have a dad. What would you tell a young guy now who doesn't have a dad, who's growing up kind of wondering how to find his way? What advice would you give to that young guy?
Is that you're as good as anybody, and you're just as worthy as any of these other kids. And I think when you talk to them, you've got to really boost their confidence. Some guys, without a doubt, will have a real false bravado and act like they're super confident, but they're really insecure and don't believe in themselves. But you've got to – you can't be too positive. I think Al Miller, who was a strength coach at Alabama when I was there, and he was in the Strength Coaches Hall of Fame in Denver Broncos, Atlanta Falcons, he's everywhere. My brother, James, ran into him last year and just asked him what's the most important thing from dealing with kids. Kids all the way to pro ball, what's the most important thing? He said, confidence. He didn't even bat an eye. He told James, confidence. If a kid has confidence, he'll be okay. I don't care what level, from youth league to pro football. And you've got to build that confidence in sometimes with a kid that doesn't have a father. And you got to know, he's got to know you love him, and you can't fake it.
It's got to be for real, sincere.
It's got to be for real.
Yeah, I've always said kids are very perceptive.
So perceptive.
Very discerning.
They're perceptive and they're resilient. They can go on to the next guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If something happens, kids are resilient. They can adjust to any change at school. The parents can't, but the kids are resilient.
Yeah. I think that's part of the story of when you took us to the swimming hole. You were sending a message that was, hey, I care about you guys as more than just football players. I care about you as people. And the other thing you did was you said, hey, guys, let's all go to church together. I remember we all went to church with you.
Yeah.
And that wasn't mandatory, but it's something you've made us feel comfortable with. And it's those kind of things that I think kind of draw the line and let kids know that they are special, that Coach cares about me more than just as an athlete. And all the guys that I played with, they got more from just knowing that you valued them than they ever would have from running a touchdown.
Mishandled a lot of situations when I was young and didn't know how to handle kids, but there's always a positive way to say something.
Right. You got that from your dad.
Yeah, but I was bad about it, coaching. I never got personal. But, if you just tell them you're too good a ball player to do something that's stupid, you're not calling them stupid, okay? It puts it back on them. Mm-hmm. Hey, I better do better next time. I'm better than this.
There's power in the way you say things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think some mistakes that dads make, dads who have boys that are playing football?
Well, we're in this time now where they make all the dads and moms feel guilty if they're not paying for lessons or paying for strength training classes and all this, and then the dads just get kind of wrapped up in it sometimes, and the moms, but don't. They gotta love it. You can't make them love it. Mm-hmm. You've got to see how much they do in the backyard by themselves before you go to pay lessons for a kid. Does he like to play ball all the time, or is he just having to show up and do this? Mm-hmm. And but dads just let your son find what he wants to do. It may not be athletics, but and then support him in whatever he wants to do. And don't embarrass them, and don't holler at them. And I've got a grandson now playing in the 8 years old, baseball, basketball, and all that. But I catch myself wanting to tell a few of those parents to shut up.
Yeah.
Because I did tell a dad one day, and he wasn't misbehaving, but I just said, you're going to learn. I've been through 3 or 4 cycles of youth leagues from playing it, watching it,
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see how little this matters when you get older. It's not that important.
Yeah, that's true. That's good advice.
Well, talking to college coaches now, and I noticed it some when I was coaching, but I didn't you get so much smarter as you get older, and you look back and you see things. But I talk to a lot of coaches now. Still have a lot of connections, and you know, a lot of times at the bigger schools, you see the parents are at every game. Just about everybody that's playing at the big schools now, you'll see them. You'll have one parent there, most of the time two parents, and you go to the next level down, and it's where the guys have had issues, and they're playing. And guys that coach at that level say it's not unusual for a kid to come out of the locker room and there not be anybody there after the game. An aunt, uncle, anybody. And they say they think that's a big, I think that's a big difference. That's why those kids are at that level. A lot of times they're on a little bit lower level because of some issues academically or off the field. And then it's funny that coincides with you don't see parents down there waiting on them after games. I don't want to single out any schools, but those coaches tell me,
Yeah.
Because you see guys, you say, man, he could play for anybody. If he could just keep himself together,
So the absence of the father in the home is just hurting them. They just don't have the mental capacity, the strength to endure the things they have to go through.
Right. You never get out on your own terms. And when some things happened at the end of my career there. When I was at Clemson, and you can't be bitter about them because bitterness only affects you.
Right.
Try to tell these kids bitterness only affects you. I try to tell grown men that all the time. But I didn't know what I was going to do, and there were several high school jobs, and I thought, well, and it wasn't in the cards, and it was just the situation I was in. It was just not really hireable, so.
Which was no fault of your own. I can vouch for that.
Yeah, well. And so then I knew I had to, move on, but I kept thinking I would go back because I thought I was called to coach. I really did, looking back. Because I knew at a young age I wanted to be a coach, and I thought I was called to it. And then at age 37, 38, I'm out. And so, we moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, and took a job up there out of coaching. And I tried to throw myself into the church, Sunday school, and eventually was on the board of directors of East Tennessee Fellowship of Christian Athletes and trying to give back that way. And then Coach Courtney at Farragut High School was kind enough to realize, hey, he'd call, talk football, and I'd go over and watch film at his office, and which got my fix. And then I did a mission trip, 3-week mission trip in college football to Turkey, and it was very rewarding. And I tried to give back, but I feel guilty. And I really think my dad, he kept asking me he kept saying, do you think you'll ever go back and teach? And I kept thinking I would, but it just, it didn't materialize. And I'll be honest, I feel very guilty sometimes about that. And I really do. I've had Lisa and I've been married 40s. We got married right after that fall of.
Yeah, I remember.
We got married right there, and we've been married 43 years and been in that church since we moved there 30 years ago to Knoxville. And our daughter's grown, the grandkids 10 minutes from the house, but I just recently retired and from medical sales, and it was very rewarding, as far as it was a good living, but it was about the relationships you developed in that. Mm-hmm. But, I still wouldn't, I'm retired in June, and I'm still figuring out which volunteer ministry I want to throw myself into there in Knoxville. There's several that I've talked to and that I can put a lot of time in to give back.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at a picture this picture was taken, I don't know, 20 years after you had us guys a year. And just so people know, I've got a reason I'm going to tell this. I'm hoping it'll inspire some people. Your career got cut short through no fault of your own, but you made the most of it while you were there. Yeah. And I think that's a message for all coaches. Make the most of it while you were there. I'm looking at a group of 8th and 9th grade boys. There were about 30 of us. And you had no idea when you were coaching us that one of those guys would become a college professor. One of them would become an executive at a telephone company, a high school principal, a business restaurant owner, a lawyer, a manager of a business, a pastor, a manager at a oil company. And you had 4 guys who gave over 30 years each to the military. You got one guy that was in the Air Force. Your quarterback was an Air Force guy for 20 years. You've got a college football coach, Brick Haley. And to think that group of guys who came out of – it wasn't the best – we were rough.
Yeah, you're rough. You didn't have the best back. Yeah.
To think that you had guys that were going to become college professors and coaches and lawyers and high school principals out of that group would have been unbelievable. But those guys, every one of them, attribute a lot of their success to you. And I know that for a fact because for years they've told me. But, Coach, I put together a little gift for you. And I don't do it just for the sake of giving you a gift. I do it because I hope it'll inspire that young coach, that 22-year-old coach who's got a group of 9th graders that he's pouring his life into. And I hope it'll inspire that coach who's trying to keep up with all of his guys 40 years later to know that it's worth it. Reached out to a few of you players and just asked them to give a little comment about what you mean to them. And we'd like to share that with you.
Jerry, I'm so grateful when you and Lisa moved here to Knoxville that we got to know each other. And I know how bad that it was, that move, difficult move from Alabama, which I know in our talks, Alabama has a lot of special places for you and things as you've grown up and things you did there and still call your home. But, here in Knoxville, you've made a big impact on us here in the Farragut area and just our football program things, just getting to know you and how we sit and talk about things, advice I get, and just all the fun we have, laughter, and just really sometimes serious advice. I consider you one of my special friends.
Coach, what's up, man? Hey, this is Brick. Of course, you know who this is. Hey, I just wanted to take a minute and tell you how important you've been in my life and all the things that you've done for me, my family, in order to give us the foundation of where we started to go where we are right now.
Hey, Coach, how you doing, man? Thanks for everything, man. From me, my family, to you and your family. Thanks for everything throughout life, and many blessings, man, continue going on. Thank you, Coach Pullen.
Yeah, Coach Pullen. This is Darren Wright, your old 9th grade quarterback. Just want to take this opportunity to let you know that I appreciate some of the things you taught me as a young boy. As a man now, I can reflect back on those things. At the time, I probably didn't really understand it. But now I can reflect back and understand some of the things that we went through and that you taught us.
Hey, Coach Pullen, it's an honor for me to pay tribute to you. I remember the night when you gave me, I was a fullback, and you called my number about 10 straight times. And it was 4 yards in a cloud of dust every time. And about the 5th time you called the play, I began to think you were mad at me. You were trying to kill me because I could barely stand up, and I was just hurting and bruised and tired. And in those days, there was no tap out. You couldn't do this or signal to the coach to take you out of the game. So I wasn't about to do that. and I ended up with 16 carries and a little over 100 yards. I still have the newspaper clipping from it. But through the years, I've thought a lot about that night, how I wanted to tap out, say, hey, coach, take me out. But you just kept pounding and pounding and pounding, and I ended up scoring the final touchdown. But through life and through my careers, you know, I opened a children's home and worked with troubled kids for 32 years. There are a lot of times I wanted to tap out, and I would think about that night, and it was kind of a symbol for me to remember that there were people depending on me to carry the ball.
Hey, Coach, this is Darryl. I just want to take this time out to thank you for being a great inspiration in my life and the lives of all of us fellow guys from 11th Street. Because you was a big part of our lives and us not getting in trouble and staying out of trouble. And you kept us focused on God and showing us how to be a good person in life. And it shows in our everyday life as we live today's lives now. Thank you, Coach. We love you.
Jerry, so glad to get to be a part of this with you, and lots of funny stories when I think about the Pullens, going swimming at Johnny Deep, and then having a big cookout at your house.
And you know, I just remember though, you know, he believed in us, and I always, when I took that into teaching and coaching and other things like that, and I've seen that with other situations in my life where, you know, a few seconds literally of encouragement can change someone's life. I had that happen with one of my professors in grad school. I was going to quit my first semester. I thought these people are too smart for me. I'm just some washed up old football player. I can't do this. And had my main professor encourage me for a few minutes, or literally like 45 seconds after class. And I stuck with it, changed my whole life. So that's the kind of thing. And Jerry kind of was all throughout my life. He's been there as a you know, coach, mentor, friend. And I can remember getting in the mail, you know, when I got, you know, All-State, you know, an honorable mention or something like that. He had a clipping when I got all conference in Troy, you know, just always keeping up with us and encouraging us. So I'm thankful. I got to grow up with the Pullens, a lot of great memories, but also I'm so thankful that I had him as a coach, mentor, and friend. And so, Jerry, love you, buddy. Thank you so much. And, you know, don't ever doubt the impact you've had in people's lives. So, love you. Talk to you soon.
So, Coach, I'll just reemphasize what Richard said. Don't ever doubt the impact you've had in people's life. I think it's remarkable that a group of, we're old men now, we're all, you know, we still remember our ninth grade coach. And that's a testimony to who you are and the investments you made in us. And I think every one of us would attribute our success to the things we learned in the summer of 1980 when you were our coach. So I hope we've honored you. And more than that, I hope that there's someone out there watching who can see this and say, I want to be the next Jerry Pullen, because we need more guys like you.
I appreciate that.
Well, we hope we've inspired some coaches. This is a little bit unusual, a coach with that many players to remember a coach after 43 years. But you know what? Coaches are an important part of our society, particularly with a lot of guys growing up without a dad. And one of our goals with the That's My Dad project is to inspire men to reach out and be father figures to those kids that don't have them. So hope we've done that today. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week with another episode of the That's My Dad podcast, where we're breaking cycles of generational fatherlessness and we're inspiring fathers to become great dads. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.